Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of The Expanding Soul, a place where we explore growth, healing, and what it really means to become the best versions of ourselves. Okay, so I listened back to my last podcast, and yeah, that was not exactly what I was going for. I wanted this to be more conversational, but the last one felt really scripted. I mean, I spoke clearly, I had solid info and all of that good stuff, so it's not a complete failure, but it definitely has some room for improvement. I think it came out like that because I can be such a perfectionist. I mean, I had it all written out and ready to go, and I'm just telling myself, I'll just read it conversationally. It'll be great. People will love it. And I wanted it written out because I was all worried, wondering what if I forget to say something important, or what if I just forget what I'm talking about in general and just keep rambling on and on. And then before posting it, I re listened to it and I kept debating with myself on whether I wanted to just wait and re record it where it sounded like I wanted. And then I was like, wait, no. So what if it's not what you wanted? It's still the same information, and it's what came out, so maybe that's how it needed to be presented. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's a really hard lesson for me to learn sometimes, guys. I can sometimes use perfection as a procrastination tool. Like, I don't really share anything that I'm doing with others until it's absolutely perfect, especially for things I artistically create, like paintings or photography art pieces. So I'll spend hours and hours and hours perfecting things. I think a lot of artists are like that, really. But with some things, that level of perfectionism isn't really serving me in a healthy way. Like, I feel like if I'd allowed myself to go back and perfect that episode, then I'd be setting the precedent for myself that I would make every episode moving forward perfect. And if I'm making every episode perfect, then I'm defeating the whole purpose of this podcast being about a normal human experiencing and processing self growth in real time. So I'm leaving it. That will forever be my first episode, and that's okay. On my 400th episode, if I make it that far, I'll look back at that episode and this one and we'll be like, "Aw, look how far I've come." And that will be so awesome. I cannot wait. Moving forward, though, I am going to try to be a little less scripted. I'm really good at just speaking on the fly with nothing pre planned, or if I do have something planned, maybe just like a little checklist or something. But for this podcast, I get so nervous. Maybe it's because the content discussed here is so personal and meaningful to me. Like, I feel like if I didn't plan it, I would hit record and then just freak out wondering what I'm supposed to talk about for 20 minutes. Plus, sometimes writing this out is really therapeutic for me. Just diving into my thoughts and hearing the pleasant typing of each keystroke. I feel like some of the deepest thoughts I have can be reached in that meditative-like state. So I'm going to try to do a combination of trying to speak more spontaneously while also including some of those deeper thoughts. So in my last episode, I didn't give you a whole lot of information about who I am. I've always struggled with writing personal bios. Maybe it's because I believe that you get to know someone over time with shared experiences. So the initial bio feels kind of pointless in a way. But that's just not true. I mean, knowing things about people creates authenticity and trust. So maybe not being able to talk about myself is kind of a deeper issue. But regardless, I want this to be real. Not just a place for tips and tricks, but a place to feel understood and uplifted. And you're not going to feel that without some sort of trust with who you're listening to, right? So, shit. Who am I? Who is Kristen? I don't really want to get into my entire life story. That'd be a really long episode. I'm only 32, but sometimes I feel a lot older. But maybe I can tell you who I am because of those life experiences. I think I'm going to treat this as kind of like a journal entry. You should do it too, honestly. Write down who you are. Not what you do, not who you take care of, not what you've been through, but who you are down to the core. What are your qualities? What are your core values? What are the building blocks that make up you? I'm going to go ahead and read mine out loud. So, who is Kristen? The basis of who I am stems from the morals and the values that I've learned to represent through my life experiences. I'm human, and there were certainly times that my behavior differed from my values, but that's what this human experience is all about. It's about learning and experiencing and trying and failing and learning more and adjusting. Everyone has room for improvement. I know I certainly do. But overall, I'm pretty proud of the person I've become. I'm someone who values moral integrity. I'm a very empathetic person, which means I'm also a very emotionally sensitive person. I know how it can hurt when others aren't honest or trustworthy with me, so any decision that I make has to be one that I know I can sleep with at night. I don't ever want to be the reason that someone feels bad or hurt. I also strongly value authenticity. This has always been a big thing for me. Everything that I do with sincerity. I just feel like there's no point not to. I try to always be my genuine self so that others know that I'm a safe place for them to be their genuine selves. I feel like conversations that can come from getting to know someone on that raw level are the most intriguing that I've experienced. Possibly because of those connections, it's really important for me to help others and help the world around me. Yes, I want to be rich so I can go on nice vacations and live in an awesome house and all that good stuff. But ultimately, I want to be rich so I can help others. I want to open an animal shelter and donate to whatever charity I feel like. And to be able to leave $1,000 cash tip for the badass waitress I had that was on her game despite having 2 jobs and 3 kids. Like, I want to help the world. I also believe in doing things from a place of love. Nothing ever works out when you come from a negative place like anger or hurt. I'm still working on this because, again, I am very much a human being. But I truly believe that the way that you show love to others can be an underused superpower. And I very much value learning. I consider myself a pretty smart person, although I've likely forgotten a lot of it by now. I did actually get my bachelor's degree in physics with an emphasis on astronomy. I know you're probably thinking, oh, but you said you're a real estate agent. And that is a very, very, very long story. But the point is, I'm smart enough to learn whatever it is I want to learn. And I think that learning should be an ongoing thing throughout your whole lifetime. You can never know everything. There's always room to learn and grow. So I really find that kind of knowledge-seeking energy attractive in other people. Not like attractive in the romantic sense, but on a soul level, like even for friends. Aside from all of that, I'm someone who also suffers from chronic illness. So I truly value the time I spend in good health. I work really, really hard for my health. I changed my diet. I started going to the gym every day. My health is my number one priority because I can't do anything else without it. In a way, I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned through having to do this because it's taught me how determination, patience, and perseverance can pay off in the long run. And it's made me realize the inner strength that I already have. That's all I have written down, but just a little spin-off from there. My struggles with my health also have made me realize how important it is to put the same work into your mind. You can have all of the time in the world, all of the health in the world, all of the money, but if you aren't happy within your own mind, you're not going to be happy with your life. I'm honestly excited to start facing that and growing my own mind again. Every time in the past when I went through something hard and had to dig into myself to heal and grow, in the moment I hated every second of it, but by the time it was over, I wouldn't change a thing because it made me stronger, wiser, calmer, more happy. So I know that good things come from facing what's uncomfortable. And I'm finally starting to get my courage back, so I can't wait to see the version of me that becomes out of this next phase of growth. I hope all of that gives you at least a little bit of insight into who I am at my core. You may not know my full story just yet, but now at least you know where my heart is. Okay, so let's dig into today's topic, the 12 universal laws of manifestation and the 7 Hermetic principles they originate from. So last time we talked about the science of manifestation and how your brain actually learns to focus on fulfilling your desires more accurately through practice and repetition. But now I'm curious about the other, less sciencey explanation. I want to know everything that all of the spiritual healers and normal people say about manifestation. After all, you can't say you thoroughly explored an idea unless you factor in all available knowledge and possibilities, right? Like I did last time, I'll provide you with all of the references in my podcast description text if you want to dig into it a little bit more. So, manifestation is the idea that you can use your mind to shape your reality, and it stems from the law of attraction. I've heard the law of attraction before, but I really don't know much about it or where it even comes from. As I researched, I fell into a little bit of a rabbit hole of information. I found out that the law of attraction is a part of the 12 universal laws that originated from a book called The Kybalion by a pseudonym, the Three Initiates. The authors claim that the book held all of the teachings from Hermes Trismegistus, who lived in early Egypt and was the father of the occult of wisdom. In the book, there are only 7 principles called the 7 Hermetic Principles. In the world of spirituality, those laws extend into the 12 that we're familiar with today. And now keep in mind, although I say universal laws or, the Hermetic principles, all of these are principles. They're not physical laws. So they're things that you can work on and try to improve through time. So I found the book online, and I'm going to give you a little summary of the principles. The book goes into greater detail about each and the universe in general, but for today, I want to focus on relating these principles to the 12 universal laws. But I may make another episode in the future with a little summary of the book itself if it's interesting. So apparently, Hermes lived for over 300 years before finally passing, and both the Egyptians and the Greek deified him as a god, the god of wisdom. Hermetic philosophy persisted through the generations through oral teachings from master to student. The 3 initiates say that the Kybalion is the sum of all the Hermetic teachings passed down. Because of this, there aren't many written texts describing his teachings. So the 3 initiates say they too are students of Hermes, and they want to share the knowledge so that it can find those that are ready to receive it. Because apparently, when the teachings are ready to truly be heard, they find the student who is ready to hear them. Which means you and I both must be ready, right? Okay, so the first of these 7 Hermetic principles is the principle of mentalism. There's a quote on the page that says it's from the Kybalion. But the book is also called the Kybalion, so I'm not really sure if maybe the traditions were orally passed down, where the initiates memorized them and quoted from that. But anyways, the quote says, quote, "The all is mind, the universe is mental," end quote. I read the summary of this law by the 3 initiates, but I'll be honest, it was published in like 1912, so the way they talk is a little bit different than what we're used to. I wanted to be sure that my understanding was correct and found another article that explains it really well, so I'll add that into the references if you want to check it out. It's essentially saying that what they consider as the all is what some may consider as God or the creator or the universal consciousness. And everything we see in our physical reality is a mental manifestation of that universal consciousness of infinite intelligence. All of us have pieces of that universal consciousness within us, and therefore, we too can use our minds to shape our realities. Our minds may not be on the same level to create entire universes, but they can influence and improve our lives. And like we figured out in the last podcast, there's scientific evidence that you can retrain your brain to better shape your reality. The second Hermetic principle is the principle of correspondence. So I'll add a more normally written article to the references for each of these, by the way, if you do want to check it out. But the quote given from the original Kabbalion here says, quote, "As above, so below. As below, so above," end quote. And what they're saying here is that there are multiple planes of existence: the material, the mental, and the spiritual planes. And on each plane of existence, the 7 Hermetic principles still apply. Now, this next one I might be nerding out a little bit on, and that's the principle of vibration. So the 3 initiates quote this from the Kabbalion, quote, "Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates," end quote. And they continue on to say that science has supported that everything in our universe vibrates and puts off its own frequency based on how fast or slow that vibration is. But the followers of Hermes knew this 1,000 years ago. There are many frequencies that things can vibrate at, and things vibrate faster the closer it resonates with the universal consciousness. That consciousness also vibrates at the highest possible frequency, which is so fast that it appears not to move at all. Now, I do want to share a quote from the text. It says, quote, "An understanding of this principle with the appropriate formulas enables Hermetic students to control their own mental vibrations as well as those of others. The masters also apply this principle to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power," end quote. This is what triggered my nerd excitement. At first, it sparks the conspiracy stories I've heard about the pyramids and ancient monuments being built with the power of using vibrational waves to move massive objects. And there are a couple of physicists that have explored similar theories. And by the way, this is when I seriously appreciated doing this podcast, whether anyone listens or not, because it gave me the excuse to read about all of this again, and I probably wouldn't have if I didn't have a finished product to complete, you know? Okay, so the physicist. Nikola Tesla is famous for his work in creating wireless energy and his work in creating the modern alternating current. One of his most famous quotes is, quote, "If you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration," end quote. Tesla was also a believer in a universal energy or universal consciousness, was convinced he'd received a radio transmission from Mars, and he had pet pigeons. But for real, he's such a genius and eccentric individual, and I absolutely love it. I might have to do a future episode entirely about him, so this doesn't end up being too long, actually. Okay, so back to the 7 Hermetic principles. So the 4th is the principle of polarity. The Kabbalion quote provided here reads, quote, "Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled," end quote. This one talks about the things that are polar opposites of each other are actually elements of the same thing. The difference between hot and cold is the temperature. Hot has a higher temperature and cold has a lower temperature, but they're both amounts of heat. Or think of the colors black and white. They're just certain amounts of reflected light, but on different scales. And the same goes for the mind. Think of love versus hate, two polar opposites of differing emotional vibrations. But the three initiates said, quote, "It is possible to change the vibrations of hate to the vibrations of love in one's own mind and in the mind of others," end quote. So if it's possible to turn hate to love, then you can also turn negativity into positivity, fear into bravery, numbness into joy. There's so much more that I could get into here, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving. But I've added more detailed perspectives to the references. So let's go ahead and talk about the fifth principle, which is the principle of rhythm. The quote here says, quote, "Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates," end quote. So with the principle of polarity having two extremes of something, the principle of rhythm is the natural change between the two extremes. Nations rise and they fall. We're born and we die. Worlds are created and destroyed. Everything is fluctuating on its extreme like a sine wave infinitely moving up and down. The only constant in life is change itself. Everything will eventually change. Nothing is permanent. Impermanence is the only thing that's eternal. True happiness is found in the awareness of that process and the ability to ebb and flow with the changes. You enjoy and appreciate the good times, and you can anticipate and power through the bad times. This one hit home for me, honestly. In one of the roughest parts of my life, I was essentially homeless and working a job that wasn't fulfilling. But I kept telling myself, impermanence is eternal. Everything changes. And I tried to appreciate that job for being a means to an end, you know? It got me through until I could do something else. So the sixth Hermetic principle is the principle of cause and effect. The quote here says, quote, "Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law," end quote. So for this principle, they're saying that there's always a reason for everything and that there is no chance. Every event has many or multiple causes or conditions that happened in order for that event to take place. According to the three initiates, the higher planes of existence affect the lower planes. So by expanding your mind into those higher planes of existence, you can very much affect the lower level plane of existence that you currently reside on. Many people live their lives on autopilot, letting other people's causes determine their events. But by mastering your mind, you can take that control back. They also say that people who master this principle can achieve massive amounts of wealth. So just put a little sticky note on that one for later. And finally, the last Hermetic principle is the principle of gender. The Kabbalion quote the three initiates provide here reads, quote, "Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes," end quote. They're saying here that everything on every plane of existence has both masculine and feminine elements. In the physical plane, those elements manifest as the male and female sex. They also say that every person contains both elements. So if you're a male, you may also have feminine qualities. And if you're a female, you may also have masculine qualities. But on higher planes, there may be masculine or feminine qualities, but the two are thought of as one. There is no male or female in the higher planes. I think this duality between the masculine and feminine energies can make it logical to understand why there are so many gender classifications and sexualities. Everyone has their own unique signature on the gender spectrum, ranging from feminine to masculine. So, of course, we'd need more than two ways to classify where our signature is located on that spectrum. All right, so now we know a general idea of the 7 Hermetic Principles. Now I want to take a look at the 12 universal laws. I may use various sources in explaining this, but anything used will be in the references. Keep in mind, though, on topics like this, they aren't necessarily verified sources like I'd use for more scientific reasons, but there isn't exactly a lot of scholarly articles on this stuff either, so you get what you get. The first universal law is the law of divine oneness. We're all connected. We're connected to each other and to all living beings here and throughout the entire cosmos. We're all physical manifestations of the same energy, the same universal consciousness. While yes, we are different with our own experience and interests and opinions, we all energetically come from the same source. For the Hermeticists, this is called the all, but it's been expanded into its own principle for this law of manifestation. I'm not going to lie, when I first heard of the idea of a universal or collective consciousness, it scared the living shit out of me. I think it scared me because, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that when we die, our personal consciousness will return and join the collective, essentially being a memory for this collective consciousness, where this consciousness ceases to exist that I have now? And if so, does that mean that people that I've lost, or the people that I will lose throughout my lifetime, do they only exist in a memory of another consciousness? I think the idea of someone's individuality only existing as a memory just made me sad, and it made me angry. It made the deaths that I've experienced throughout my lifetime feel more permanent. But I guess so goes the way of life, right? Nothing is permanent. Everything changes. Everything evolves. Maybe at the point that our soul does rejoin with this universal consciousness, it's an experience we would beg for. Maybe it's the feeling of safety and love and security, of being home. Maybe reconnecting is what our personal consciousness will need to truly evolve. I mean, who knows? But in the meantime, everything you see, everything you touch, every person you come across, it's all connected. We're all a part of this complicated universal family that physics may never quite understand. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to have bad days. We're going to say things we don't mean and do things we wish we hadn't. But just being aware is the main thing. Be aware and make an intent to treat the world as you would treat someone you love, even when it rubs you the wrong way. This is something that I'm really, really working on. Sometimes my survival mode switch turns on and I don't know, I just get defensive. But I'm aware and I'm actively trying my best, so that's what matters. Okay, so the second universal law is the law of vibration. This is derived from the Hermetic Principle of vibration, but the Newer Age laws take it a step further to say that even our thoughts, our emotions, and our beliefs, all of it gives off its own frequency. Okay, let's take a quick side note for me to put in a quick physics lesson. I know, but I'll try to make it fun, okay? So there's a theory in quantum physics called the wave-particle duality that says that particles can demonstrate wave-like properties and waves can demonstrate particle-like properties. A particle is a piece of solid matter that is localized in space and time, or space-time. In order for a particle to move its energy, it has to physically move. Now, a wave, on the other hand, is something that's not in a fixed location, but is propagating its energy through a medium, like air or space. This theory so far only tells us about things that act as both particles and waves, things like light. But then comes along this guy named de Broglie, who comes up with the de Broglie principle, which is a mathematical equation that actually links a particle property, momentum, with a wave property, wavelength. Based on this equation, because momentum is related to mass, we know that massive objects will have wavelengths so incredibly small that it's impossible to detect them. So while you or I may appear to be a solid object, we're really just a really, 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 really fastly vibrating object. So this is mathematical proof that you and I are waves that propagate energy outward into our surroundings. Now, we just need to make sense of how a thought could propagate outwards as a wave into our surroundings as well. Okay, so the brain functions by firing and connecting neurons, which do create a charge. Therefore, the brain does create its own magnetic field. But the magnetic field it puts off is very, very weak. So there's something missing between science and this universal law. But as we learned when discussing the Kybalion, that the universal laws originated from, there are multiple planes of existence, and the higher planes of existence determine the outcome of the lower planes, with our physical plane being the lowest. If these planes are higher dimensions, perhaps when you do raise your consciousness to a higher plane and have a thought or a belief, maybe it goes further there. I mean, who knows? But the law of vibration in the manifestation or spiritual sense is all about understanding that our thoughts do affect others, and others affect us. So it's important to be aware of that, and to treat others as you would treat someone you love. Treat yourself like someone you love too, if you don't already. It also means that everything has its own individual frequency. Have you ever met someone that you just didn't vibe with or that didn't sit well with you for some unknown reason? They probably have a lower frequency than you do. Now, on the other hand, have you ever met someone that you absolutely loved and felt like you've known forever? They probably have a frequency very similar to yours. Now let's move on to the third universal law, the most famous by far, the law of attraction. This one is very well known thanks to the movie and the book The Secret. I watched the movie once, but maybe I should check out the book. But the law of attraction essentially says that things with a similar frequency attract each other. From what I've read, the people who fail at manifesting are the ones that don't fully align with what they desire. You can want something all day and all night, but if you're on a lower frequency, you're not going to get it. And how do you increase your frequency to get the thing that you're wanting? Through your mind. Feelings like joy, love, and gratitude vibrate at a higher frequency than feelings like fear, anger, and frustration. And I can't lie here, guys, I am guilty. I'm guilty as fuck. I've been dreaming of a better life while still being stuck in victim mode. That's a very triggering term for me, actually. I don't mean victim mode like the annoying person that lives like Eeyore under the rain cloud saying poor me all the time. I mean that I haven't been living in my own power. I had trauma, and then I got sick, and then in my mind, I just felt weak and unmotivated and stuck. I'm at no fault for feeling that way. It was a total human reaction. But my mindset did lower my frequency, and by doing so, it took me further away from the life that I had been dreaming of. And now, I have an awakening soul and an opportunity. So bring it on. Let's get it. All right. So the fourth universal law is the law of correspondence. Remember that quote from the Hermetic Principle of correspondence? As above, so below, as below, so above. Well, in the universal law of correspondence, that's transformed into, quote, as above, so below, as within, so without, end quote. So the law of correspondence in a manifestation sense means that your inner world directly affects your outer world. So to change your life, you have to change your mind. That means eliminating limiting beliefs, focusing on self-care, and living from a state of eternal self-growth. Say you want to manifest money, but it just isn't happening for you. Maybe you, like me, are someone that came from a family that didn't have financial abundance. You may think things like, people like me don't get wealthy, or must be nice not to have to live paycheck to paycheck. I'll be really honest here, I'm very guilty of this too. As someone who has been homeless, I've seen just how badly people treat people that have nothing. I've seen people living in mansions that they don't need while people outside are sleeping in tents. I've seen the systematic inequality of keeping the poor poor and the rich rich. And that's just about finances. I'm white, but what if I was a black woman? Then it would have been 10 times harder to escape those circumstances I was in. I've seen it in action with black coworkers and friends. Black and brown people are not treated the same as white people, especially not in poverty. And when you live in such conditions, being constantly looked down at, constantly judged, it's easy to develop the mindset that in this unfair world, there is no way to escape it to live the life of your dreams. It's easy to unintentionally allow anger and resentment to be built up over it. After all, it isn't fair. It isn't fair that some stuck-up white lady inherits $5 million while a brown single mother working 2 jobs can barely make a rent payment. I think this is how it happened for me. The unfairness of the world we're living in gave me a sort of justice complex. And I get angry when I see injustice. My fight or flight is instantly triggered. And I'm white, so I can only imagine what happens in the minds of people who aren't white. But according to the universal laws, having a mindset of anger and resentment will never bring you closer to your dreams. All having a negative mindset does is match your energy to other negative things until your life is filled with even more negativity. Instead, they say that you need to have a mindset of gratitude and self-worth and courage in order to raise your frequency to attract things like money and joy. So how the fuck are we supposed to do that after living in an unjust society our entire lives? I think the answer is love. And not even showing love to that snobby rich white lady who inherited $5 million, but showing love to ourselves. The first step is being aware. If you catch yourself shaming yourself, notice it and address it. A lot of people who have grown up poor may associate their lack of wealth and happiness with not being good enough, because that's what our society does. So if you catch yourself saying something like, I'm such a terrible mom, I don't even have enough money to take them on vacation once a year, stop yourself and recognize that you're having a very human thought for a very valid reason, and then try to turn the thought into something true and positive, like, my kids know they're loved, and we have fun no matter where we are. I'm so grateful for that. This way, you're keeping your vibration high enough to attract good things, but it's also not forcing you to be in this perfect manifestation world where you have to pretend like you do have the same opportunities as everyone else when you really don't. Does that make sense? Okay, so I've talked a lot about this one. Let's move on to the 5th law, the law of action. What this law says is that you can't rely solely on energy and manifestation to reach your dreams. You have to take physical action and put in the hard work. This doesn't mean that you have to suffer, though. There's a difference between hard work and suffering. A lot of people are waiting to take action. Maybe they're waiting for things to calm down in their lives, or to feel ready, or Maybe they're afraid of it not working, afraid of failing. But you're not going to have clarity until after you start putting in the work. The hard work gets you in the right spot, and then the energy attracts the thing you're wanting. It's all about releasing your comfort and embracing vulnerability, because manifestation is vulnerable work. It's kind of like the fear you've been carrying are the clothes on your back. And in order to get everything you've ever wanted, you have to strip down and bare your naked soul to the universe. Of course, it's going to feel vulnerable. But that vulnerability is what's going to give you the chance to grow into a better version of yourself and attract better things into your life. So what have you really got to lose? Moving on to the sixth universal law, let's talk about the law of cause and effect. Similar to the Hermetic Principle of cause and effect, every event has a direct cause, and every action has a direct effect. The thoughts, intentions, beliefs, the energy you put out into the world shapes your current reality. What you give is what you get back. Some people think of this as karma, and in a way it is. The more good you do, the more good will be done to you. The more bad you do, the more bad will be done to you. This is not to say that everything that has happened to you is your fault, though. Bad things do happen to good people. I do believe that there's good even in the hardest of things, though. Just for a personal example, I'll use the death of my dad. Despite the countless times I wished it didn't happen, losing him put me on another level of awareness that made it possible for me to help others in a very empathetic way. It's not something I ever wanted to happen, but good did come of it somehow. So those bad things that happen to people, like death, rape, assault, whatever it may be, they absolutely did not happen because of you. This law is just saying that if you have a negative mindset, you will attract more negativity into your life. And if you have a positive mindset, you'll attract more positivity into your life. Bad things may still happen, but good things will come too. Okay, so the seventh law is the law of compensation. This law follows along with the law of correspondence by adding in that you will be compensated based on what you give. Your thoughts, your actions, your intentions, all of it plays in. It doesn't always have to be money either. It could be a loyal friend showing up when you need it, a moment of clarity, or even having someone not take your parking space that day. But how you give matters. Are you giving while still being judgmental? Are you not fully helping a friend in need because you feel like she doesn't deserve the help? Or are you donating to something just because your coworkers are and you don't want to look cheap? The universe knows what your true intentions are. So when you give from a place of love, a place of generosity, a place of pure empathy. You're going to have those higher vibrational things attracted back into your life if you do. The eighth universal law is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Can you say that 10 times fast? Okay, so this one says that energy is always in motion, and you always have the power to change it. Have you ever heard of the saying, energy flows where attention goes? Well, that's what we're talking about. Your mind is in control, and you always have the power to turn a negative thought into a better thought that actually serves you. It's not about being perfect. You're going to have bad days where you forget to redirect yourself or get flustered or overwhelmed. You're human. The biggest thing here is just being aware and actively trying to do better. And if you're feeling stuck, turn the negative thought into a neutral thought, and then turn the neutral thought into a more positive thought. Baby steps with intention is all it takes. And we're moving right along here to the ninth law, which is the law of relativity. And as much as I want to get into the physics facts of relativity and time being related to mass and gravitational time dilation, because it's all freaking fascinating, I'm going to jump right into the manifestation sense of this law instead. So this one is saying that everything is relative. Nothing is inherently good or bad until you compare it to something else. So, for example, say you're having a terrible day. First, your alarm didn't go off, so you were late to work. This was the third time you were late, so you actually got written up. Then after a long, busy day, you completely forgot that you told your friend you would pick her up from the airport, and you only have 10 minutes to get there, but it's 30 minutes away, so you start speeding to the airport, and then you get pulled over and get a speeding ticket. Then your friend got frustrated. She had to wait so long. So after you finally get her home, you go home to find that your cat puked all over your brand new couch. So compared to your normal day where you get to work on time, don't forget anything on your schedule, and come home to a happy little kitty, this day was absolutely the worst. But for the homeless man that sleeps in a tent outside your apartment building, you still got to wake up in your own bed. You still have a job that pays you well, have a car to pick up your friend in, have a warm home, and even a brand new couch with or without cat puke. You see what I'm saying? Everything is relative. And that means that we control the narrative, and it's possible to stop ourselves and reframe a situation to feel gratitude instead of frustration. We can practice this by just being more mindful of our thoughts. And when a negative one seeps in, we can stop and ask ourselves, is this really as bad as I think it is? What good things are coming of this? You can change your perspective to change your mindset to increase your vibrational frequency. All right, so we are on number 10 now, the law of polarity. Similar to the Hermetic Principle of polarity, everything has its opposite. That's how the universe is balanced. Hot and cold, love and hate, dark and light, peace and chaos. One extreme can't exist without the other. And it makes sense. I mean, do you not feel the high of someone treating you right because you know what it feels like to not be treated right? Does the feeling of belonging not feel so great when it happens because you know the feeling of isolation or exclusion? The lows of life suck. They really do. But those low times do have a purpose. They teach us how to be thankful for the good times and how to pay it forward. And the universe is neutral. It doesn't know if something is good or bad. That's a label that we put on things. Let's think of the polarity of wealth. On one side, you have financial abundance, and on the other side, you have scarcity and lack. If you're trying to manifest financial abundance, but you don't truly believe you're worthy of it or that you can achieve it, the universe is going to sense that and give you something that matches the frequency you're putting off. It's going to give you more scarcity. So it's important to address the limiting belief that you can't achieve financial abundance prior to trying to manifest it. Something you can do is pick something you want to manifest. I'll use the example of money since that's what I was just talking about. Write financial abundance at the top of a piece of paper. Underneath it, write all of the limiting beliefs that you have surrounding that manifestation goal. You might write something like, everyone in my family is poor, so I don't feel like I can achieve wealth. Now I want you to draw a line and write something more positive, encouraging that you will redirect yourself towards any time that the thought that you can achieve wealth comes up. So instead of saying, my family is poor and I can't achieve wealth, write, I'm ambitious and determined. Many wealthy people started from the bottom. Nothing can stop me but me. See the difference in the energy there? All right, so the 11th universal law is the law of rhythm. The universe follows cycles of change. Everything is constantly changing and nothing is permanent. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and repeat. The earth goes through spring, summer, fall, winter, and repeats. The cycles of the universe are a constant flowing dance in the background, constantly flowing and changing. Your life will always have periods of amazing happiness and success, and it will also have periods of sorrow and frustration. It's all a part of the cycle of life. Recognizing this is what gives us power, and practicing gratitude consistently through the highs and the lows will allow you to live a happier life during both the highs and the lows. When you're in a low time, just remember that things will always change and return you to a place of happiness. Even when you're experiencing a bad emotion like sadness, know that happiness will always return. The goal is to work with the rhythm instead of against it. Stop resisting change and learn to love the unexpected. I know it definitely sounds easier said than done. Now, the final law is the law of gender. Similar to the Hermetic principle of gender, this has less to do with male versus female and more to do with masculine and feminine energies. Anything and everything requires a balanced amount of feminine and masculine energy to be created. Masculine energy is very direct and structured. It's like that I'm gonna get shit done kind of energy. But if it's unbalanced, it could come across as anger or conflict. Feminine energy, on the other hand, is intuitive and nurturing. It can help you reflect on yourself and your surroundings. But if it's unbalanced, it can come off as weakness or vulnerability. The goal is to create balance between your masculine and feminine energies. Balance can give you all of the tools you need at life, and you'll live a much happier life. Creating balance can be hard too, though. If you've been living in either extreme, going to the other might feel awkward. The biggest thing is to just be mindful. If you're at work and about to do a big presentation, pull out some of that masculine get shit done energy. Or if you've been struggling emotionally, pull out some of that nurturing feminine energy and do a journal session to get in tune with yourself again. Build up both, and no matter what life throws at you, you'll know you can handle it. Wow. Okay, so we've covered all 12 of the universal laws of manifestation and the 7 Hermetic principles that they originated from. The goal here is to use all of these. You can't just work on the law of attraction because you want something, but not factor in the other laws. They all work together in balance. So now we've talked about the scientific side of manifestation and the more spiritual side of it. Because of the science accuracies so far, it does make me think that maybe the rest of it is possible. Maybe we just haven't advanced enough technologically to be able to mathematically prove it. But that's okay, I guess. If something makes your life easier or better, then fuck it, do it. And I know that by practicing mindfulness related to these 12 universal laws, my attitude, my happiness, my surroundings, they do improve. So until it starts to not improve, I'm going to keep trying. And I hope you do too. If you've listened to this entire thing, then thank you so much for being here. Every listener really just means the world to me. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow this podcast. And if you really like what you're hearing, I'd love it if you left me a review. And if you really don't like what you're hearing, shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram at The Expanding Soul and tell me what you didn't like and how I can improve, because your thoughts and opinions do matter to me. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you next time. Bye.